Hello, friends. It's Katie back with another episode of my vlog and another episode of the Cinema Club Sunday Roundup, and another week where we went kind of short on movies and only managed to watch 3 movies this week. One of the movies that we watched this week was a continuation of our kind of Studio Ghibli mini marathon that we've been working on, and we watched Spirited Away from 2001, of course, directed by Hayao Miyazaki. I don't know if you guys live under a rock, and maybe you've never heard of Spirited Away, but as near as I can tell from my research, it is the most popular, the highest grossing anime film of all time. It was the highest grossing film in Japan for almost 20 years, ever since it was released up until last year. I can't remember the name of the movie that knocked it off of the top spot. It's constantly on everyone's best of everything lists, and it's just an amazing movie. So in case for some reason you haven't ever heard of or seen Spirited Away, it is a fantasy story about a young girl named Chihiro. She's moving house with her parents, and on the way to their new house, they stop at what they think is an abandoned amusement park. And her parents decide to start eating some food that they find at this abandoned amusement park. Of course, this is a terrible idea. It's enchanted. The parents turn into pigs after they eat the local food, and Chihiro gets stuck in this spirit world where she has to take a job working at a bathhouse which just caters to Japanese spirits, like Shinto spirits. So the whole story is about Chihiro's efforts to, work at the bathhouse, function as a person in the spirit world, at the same time as trying to figure out how to turn her parents back into humans and have all 3 of them escape and get back to their real life. Spirited Away is incredible. It is a fantastic story, incredible characters, incredible animation, incredible character designs, all of course based on these traditional Japanese spirits. It's so hard to pinpoint like a favorite in the movie. Of course, everyone in our family loves No Face. We have several No Face items. I think like little dolls, and Henry has like a piggy bank or something. Of course, everyone loves Kamaji, the guy who operates the boiler and takes care of providing the hot water to all of the guests at the bathhouse. And Kamaji's army of enchanted soot sprites who are his helpers with feeding the fire for the bathhouse. The character design of Yubaba, the witch who is in charge of the bathhouse, is great. And all of her kind of associated characters that hang out with her are awesome. My personal favorite part of the film is when the stink spirit shows up and Chihiro and what is her name? Lynn, the woman who is kind of taken Chihiro under her wing, have to deal with like the stinkiest, grossest, nastiest bath of all time. And I won't spoil it and tell you how it all turns out because as usual, I want you to see the movie. I'm assuming almost everyone who is watching this vlog has seen Spirited Away. Maybe it's even one of your favorite movies also. I did see in Sean's latest issue of Diverse that he's working on, he does say that Spirited Away is his favorite Studio Ghibli film, which actually surprised me quite a bit. I didn't think that was going to be his favorite one. It's not my favorite. My favorite is definitely Nausicaa, but Spirited Away is close to the top. I'd definitely put it in the top 6 of Studio Ghibli films. So if you've never seen it, if you've seen it before, always a great rewatch. Spirited Away, it's an incredible film. It's an incredible piece of animation. 10 out of 10, totally perfect. Required viewing as far as we're concerned around here. I do think we're going to continue with our kind of Ghibli Fest next week. Henry told me that he's super into watching Castle in the Sky. And I've been thinking we need to drag Porco Rosso back out because we haven't seen that one in a while. And that is one of my favorites. I got to actually recommend that one to my mom today. She's never seen that. So, but we'll see. That'll be next week. So you have to stay tuned for the next Cinema Club to find out. Meanwhile, back to last week, we also managed to watch The Hunt for Red October. Of course, the 1990 film directed by John McTiernan based on the Tom Clancy novel. It was funny when I was talking to my mom this morning and, telling her what movies we watched last week. I mentioned Hunt for Red October and she immediately said, "Oh, my favorite movie that has no women in it." And I was like, huh, yeah, I guess it doesn't have any women in it. And I thought about it further and I said, well, The Thing is my favorite movie that has no women in it for sure. But Hunt for Red October that could be a close second. And then I thought, where's the list of movies with no women in them? And maybe I'd be depressed to look at that list, but I don't know. I'm kind of curious. It's, they're out there. But anyhow, The Hunt for Red October, like I said, based on the Tom Clancy spy novel. It is the submarine thriller starring, Sean Connery plays a Soviet submarine captain. Alec Baldwin, who's like a baby, like he just came off of Beetlejuice, so he's that young. As Jack Ryan, the CIA analyst. You've got Sam Neill is in it as one of the Russians. You've got James Earl Jones in it as Jack Ryan's boss at the CIA. You've got Tim Curry shows up in it. Jeffrey Jones is in it. There's a ton of people in this movie, just no women. And it is great. It's a little bit hard to follow plot-wise in a couple of places. Not that you have to be particularly smart. Tom Clancy novels are what they are. But I definitely, I was a little hesitant to show the kids. I thought, are they going to be able to follow this slightly convoluted and very political plot? It takes place during the Cold War. You have, again, Sean Connery is a Russian submarine captain, and he's got like the latest, newest, hottest tech submarine that has a thing called a caterpillar drive, where it can basically move through the ocean totally undetected. It's invisible to the American sonar, and nobody can tell where he is. And he leaves where he's supposed to be and starts heading towards America in the movie. And our hero, Jack Ryan, has to figure out, is he going to attack America with his nuclear missiles? Is he coming to defect to America? Jack Ryan's got to figure it out, and he's got to kind of orchestrate things with the US Navy so that they do the right thing in terms of chasing this guy down and getting things to unravel the way we want them to. Whew, I hope I avoided spoilers in that. Overall, it's a really, really good movie. Like I was saying, the plot gets a little bit convoluted, and if you don't have a good understanding of history, and particularly Cold War history, there's definitely going to be some of the dialogue that is lost on you. But I noted that Jimmy, who is 11, we split the movie into two parts, watched it over 2 days. After we had watched the first half, when we went to watch the second half, Jimmy was like, I have no idea what's going on here. And then Henry, who's 13, was like, I got you, and explained the entire plot to him. So, 13-year-old totally got it. 11-year-old definitely needed some hand-holding. And I did have to pause the movie at one point and explain what the Cuban Missile Crisis was. So there's definitely some historical long view stuff that's going to help you out a lot when watching this movie, but I don't think that it's necessary. It really felt a lot like a James Bond movie, and not just because it was starring Sean Connery, but I always feel like when I watch a James Bond film, there's a lot in like the first half hour that is this expository stuff that's explaining why he's going where he's going and doing what he's doing, and it gets very convoluted and sometimes boring. But you sit through it so that you can get to those awesome action sequences in the James Bond movies. And I feel like Hunt for Red October really flows the same way. The first 45 minutes of the movie is the setup. It's getting us to where we, can understand everything and people's motivations and what the heck is going on here. And then the remaining 2/3 of the movie is just a very cool submarine action film with lots of underwater shots of the submarines chasing each other, torpedo action, lots of interior shots in the built set environments of the submarines. It's very cool and it's really fun. And, it's a slower pace because it's taking place in this sort of quiet underwater zone. But they managed to, pack it with action and really get you going in those sequences in the second part of the movie. There's a lot of kind of like technical stuff about submarines, which is interesting if you're into that stuff. One thing I will note is at the beginning of the movie, the Russians are speaking Russian. And I mean, it's Sean Connery and Sam Neill doing Russian dialogue together with subtitles, which is a little bit awkward. And I don't speak Russian myself, but they don't sound like they're doing that good of a job. I have a lot of Russian neighbors, so I hear people speaking Russian a lot, but I don't understand it. But then pretty early on in the movie, they do this pretty slick trick where two characters are talking. They're speaking in Russian with the subtitles, and then one of the characters, the guy who's talking to Sean Connery, says something, and he says a Bible quote, and the camera zooms in on his mouth, and he says the word Armageddon, which apparently is the same word in English and in Russian. And then after he says the word Armageddon, the rest of the sentence he speaks is in English. The camera pulls out while he's doing it, and then for the whole rest of the movie, the Russian characters speak in English so that you don't have to be reading subtitles. I will note there is one part where the Americans and the Russians meet up later in the movie. And at that point, the Russians start speaking Russian again so that you can kind of keep track of who's who. But again, for the most part, the whole movie is in English. Excuse me. It's held up incredibly well. Like I said, you do need to have some functional understanding of the Cold War and the political machinations of what was going on in the 1980s when the film is set. You don't have to have a ton of it, though. And if you have that, the film holds up incredibly well. The one kind of cheesy piece is they did use baby CGI on the torpedo sequences, and they look pretty bad compared to the rest of the underwater stuff, which was obviously done with models. So just another vote for practical effects in your movies, guys. It holds up incredibly well over time. And, I guess time will tell how the computer graphics from now hold up, when we watch these movies in 20 or 30 years and see, maybe 2020's CGI is great, but boy, 1990 CGI is not great at all. So there's the downside on that one. So Hunt for Red October. I'm also going to say I've never read the book, but my mom, when she heard that we just watched the movie, was super ready to recommend the book. So if you're the type who likes to read Tom Clancy novels, apparently that's a great one. I guess you've probably already read it if you're the type who likes Tom Clancy novels. All right, the third movie that we watched this week was a bit of a disappointment for me, but whatever. We watched Saw 2. We actually were going to watch the new Saw movie, Spiral. The kids were pretty hot to watch that one. They've only seen the first movie in the franchise. They've never seen any of the sequels, but we have watched Saw. And so they wanted to check out the new Spiral Saw movie. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And then we went to watch it online and it was like $20 to rent it. And I just said, we can wait for this one to be free on some streaming service or another, but I'm not paying $20 to watch this movie. There's no way it's a $20 movie. And they were like, okay, fine. Can we watch Saw 2? And I was like, I don't love it, but okay. So my experience of the Saw franchise is I saw Saw like when it first came out. Then I skipped over all the rest of the movies. And then when Sean was in the hospital, I went through this like tear of watching a ton of movies because it was a way to turn my brain off and not have to deal with, oh my God, my husband just had a stroke and he's in the hospital. I watched probably 2 or 3 movies a day while he was in the hospital. I mean, as many as I could, just please give me something else to focus on here. So I watched the first 5 Saw movies, one after another in the space of 5 days by myself while he was in the hospital. And I stopped after the 5th one. I couldn't keep going. So I have no idea if the other 3 or 4, there's 9 altogether, including the new one. So I've missed 4 of them so far. And I just stopped after number 5 because I kind of felt like the quality of the films in the Saw franchise is like super, super high. Saw is an amazing movie. It's pretty disturbing horror stuff. So if you're not a horror person, don't watch it. But if you do like horror and for some reason you haven't seen the first Saw movie, it's really, really good. It's really clever. It's really tricky. It's got a lot going for it. It's well directed. The story is well told. It's a very quality film. Now, when this movie came out, it was a smash success. And the studios greenlit the sequel like the day that Saw came out because they were like, okay, this is a huge moneymaker. Now, the quality of this franchise, right? So Saw's way up here, and then it's like Saw 2, bam, down here, and then they're just kind of crawling along at sort of the bottom. So I'm not a huge fan of the other films in this franchise, but I will say there is some good stuff about Saw 2. Tobin Bell comes back as John Kramer / Jigsaw. He does a great job in his role. The setup this time is that, Jigsaw's back with another one of his games where he's going to, test people. And his games are always these deadly traps where a person is stuck in some kind of very convoluted sort of like Rube Goldberg machine of death. But there's a way for them to get out of it, but only if they like severely maim themselves or another person nearby. And so it's a test of like, how far will you go to save yourself is kind of the concept of these things. Of course, with these franchises, as they go on over time, they keep trying to get more and more extreme. And I mean, the first Saw movie is pretty damn extreme to begin with, but it seems like this effort to just like keep the sort of adrenaline going and keep making it more extreme. So the second movie has a bunch of ex-cons. They're trapped in a house that's rigged with a ton of these jigsaw traps, and they've been exposed to like a nerve agent, and they're all gonna die within a matter of hours unless they find the antidote by puzzling their way through these various horrendous traps that have been set for them. This one is directed by Darren Lynn Bousman, who did not direct the first one. The first one's by James Wan. And he is not as good of a director, and it's not as good of material, but the direction that the second one takes, it's like almost like a crappy early 2000s music video. There's like a lot of transitional sequences where instead of feeling like you're just watching a film, it's like suddenly like things are like really jaggedy and jittery and like repeating a bunch of times and things are flashing, and it's just totally unnecessary for the story. And it completely takes you away from the narrative and just parks you firmly in this sort of, it's the early 2000s, mid-early of that decade, that kind of shtick, that aesthetic that was going on at the time, which is sort of a continuation of like bad 90s aesthetic into like the cyber future of the 21st century, I think. So anyhow, I'm going to stop complaining about a movie that I didn't like, and I'm just going to say, if you want my advice, watch the first Saw movie and then just stop. Just pretend the rest of the franchise doesn't even exist. There's some backstory, there's some additional character development to be seen by watching the other movies, but they just don't do it for me. If you're super into the like convoluted saw traps and this like, body horror stuff, yeah, go ahead and watch them. There's a lot of that stuff in these movies, but plot-wise, character-wise, and kind of just the feeling of it wise, like I said, I really feel like that first one has a ton going for it, and the rest of the franchise just doesn't live up to it. So, that's it for me this week. I somehow managed to make it almost to 20 minutes, even though I only talked about 3 movies. So I guess a 20-minute length is like my Cinema Club deal. As usual, I want to ask you guys what you've been watching, and if you have any recommendations for our Cinema Club chapter over here. I'm also going to say I am so excited. The Hollywood Theater is reopening at the beginning of July, and I did see that on the weekend of July 17th, they are going to be running 2001 in 70 millimeter. And I like can't imagine a better return to movie theaters after this shitty break than getting to go see a 70 millimeter movie. And I mean, 2001 is the one to see at the Hollywood Theater. So if you are a Portland local, try to snap up those tickets when they go on sale. They haven't gone on sale yet. I'm going to get 5 for our crew, and we're all going to be down there, eyes wide, looking at that eye candy, and having a great old time at one of my favorite films. So, all right, you guys, as usual, I thank you so much for watching, and please take care and stay safe out there, and stay tuned for the next episode of my vlog coming up in just a few more days.